math students. Today we are going to start writing equations. Instead of graphing the equations given different information, we're going to be writing equations. So we're taking a look at going from a graph today and writing the equation from that, which is kind of backwards from what we've been doing, or taking a table of values, which we've also used for graphing. But if I give you the table of values, you should be able to get the equation without having to actually graph it. So slope-intercept form, one more time, is y equals mx plus b. Remember, the slope is how we move, and the y-intercept is where we begin. So if I give you a graph, and again, this is just kind of going backwards from what we have been doing. I know there's a lot of writing on this slide, but you can feel free to pause it and read that if you want to, but here's the main idea. If you have a graph, you should be able to find the slope by counting it, which is something that we've done already, and you should be able to find the y-intercept just by looking at where that line crosses the y-axis. So in this graph, I already sort of have the line traced in red, so it's a little bit easier to see on this black and white picture. The slope is clearly a negative slope. It's going downhill, and it's moving down 3 units. I've got that labeled on here already. Let me use a different color here. We're going to go down 3 units. 1, 2, 3. We're going sideways 2. So my slope, just using rise over run, is going to be a negative 3 over 2 slope. The y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis. So here's the y-axis right here. The y-intercept is right there at -1. So I should write that in. If I know my slope and I know my y-intercept, all I need to do now is put those two numbers in the right place, in place of the m and in place of the b in y equals mx plus b. So it's just going to be y equals -3 over 2x minus 1, or plus a -1 would be just fine. This graph, we just looked in one of our recent worksheets at these horizontal lines. A horizontal line has a slope of 0, right? So right there, the slope is 0. It's up 0, sideways 3 for the points that they have graphed there. But that's a slope of 0. The y-intercept is right here at -4. So my b is -4. So if I know my slope is 0 and my y-intercept is -4, the equation would be y equals 0x plus a -4, or just y equals -4 when I kind of clean that all up. So that means that the correct answer, looking at these, is going to be A, y equals -4. For those of you who were in class when we talked about this, I mentioned that a horizontal line is not going to touch the x-axis. That's why there isn't an x in this equation. It's just y equals -4. So everywhere on that horizontal line, the y is 4. It doesn't matter what the x is. If I give you a table of values, we should still be able to find the same 2 pieces of information. We should be able to find the slope, and we should be able to find the y-intercept. So the slope, we can use the slope formula, or I have a little trick that I'll show you in a second. The y-intercept, if you think about when we did our x and y intercepts with those tiny little table of values, remember we did this? When the x is 0, I can find the y-intercept. So what I want to do is find when the x is 0 in here. So actually, I usually start with that. My y-intercept is right here. X is 0, the y is 5. So the y-intercept on this is going to be 5. The slope, using the points that they've got here, are the top 2 points. But honestly, I don't care which ordered pairs you pick. As long as you pick 2 ordered pairs in this table, that'll work. So what they used are these right here. Okay, so they labeled the x's and the y's, and the 1s and the 2s. So here they're going to say that this is the y sub 2, and this is the y sub 1, and this is the x sub 2, and this is the x sub 1. Okay, so you could write out those ordered pairs if that helps you to see it like this. So -1, 7, and 0, 5. So I've got an X and a Y and an X and a Y, and we're going to say that these are the 1s and these are the 2s, just with how it's labeled. So substituting in, I would have 7 minus 5, subtract the Y's on the top, and then negative 1 minus 0 would give me the bottom, which gives me 2 over negative 1 or negative 2. Personally, I don't usually spend the time to label everything and show all that work. Here's how I like to do this. Remember, slope is just how things are changing, how the Y's are changing and how the X's are changing. So in here, I would say what's happening to my Y's. Here my Y decreased by 2 and the X increased by 1. I got a negative 2 over 1, which is negative 2. Same exact answer. And I didn't have to do all of the labels and the subtractions and all that kind of stuff. And remember, I don't care which ordered pairs you pick. You could pick any of these ordered pairs. Every single time this is in or decreasing by 2, decrease by 2, decrease by 2, negative 2, increase by 1, increase by 1, increase by 1. Okay? So we know that our slope is negative 2. We know that the y-intercept is 5. I could just put those two numbers into the right place. Y equals negative 2x plus 5. Personally, I think that the tables are a little bit more intimidating than the graphs because we've done so much with graphs, but it's really not that hard to find the information that we need. So for this one, for the slope, again, let's do this in terms of change in y over the change in x. What's happening to my y's every time here? They're increasing by 1 every time, which is a positive 1. And the x's, as I'm moving down my table, are increasing by 2 every single time. My slope is 1/2. Again, if you really want to do the slope formula, go right ahead. I promise you're going to get the same answer. It's 1/2. The y-intercept, now I purposely have this one where I've got both intercepts. The y-intercept is when the x is 0. So my y-intercept is negative 1. So my equation is going to be y equals 1/2 x minus 1. Or you could certainly write plus a negative 1. Please keep your slope as a fraction. Don't change that into a 0.5. That's not a nice slope kind of a number. Okay. Just to keep us in the habit of looking at real life kind of application problems, here's this one. We have this tunnel that's being dug. So as time goes on, as the months on the x-axis are increasing, the distance that they have left is decreasing. That's why this is a negative slope. I'm not looking at how far they have gone in digging the tunnel. I'm looking at how much they have left. That's why it's a negative slope on this one. So to go from this point right here to this point right here, remember you can't just count squares sometimes. This is going from 3,500 to 1,500. Which is really decreasing by, right here is that negative 2,000. It decreased by 2,000 feet in 4 months, right? To go from 0 months to 4 months, that changed in 4 months. So this would simplify to negative 500, which means that every month they're decreasing the amount left by 500 feet. They're digging 500 feet per month. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. Well, on this one, so also where our graph started, we didn't have any negative months here. So the y-intercept is 3,500. So this equation is going to be y equals negative 500x plus 3,500. And then my other question is, I want to know when there's 0 feet left to dig. I want to know how long it's going to take to dig this whole thing. Now, I've got a longer explanation that I'm going to uncover, but I'm hoping that you can also just look at the graph and say 0 feet left is at 7 months. It takes 7 months to dig that whole thing. You could substitute in that the y is 0 and show the work, or just look at the graph and get the information there. Okay, so again, this is more of what your work is going to look like today. One side of your worksheet is going to be graphs that you need to write the equation for. So in number 1, it has a negative slope. Please start by noticing that, and I would also strongly suggest that you make a list, kind of the two things that you need. I need the slope and I need the y-intercept. The slope is negative. I would even start by writing down the negative. To go from this point to this point, I'm going down 1, 2, 3, and I'm going sideways 1, 2, 3, 4. My slope is negative 3/4. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, which is right here at negative 2. So my equation is just going to be y equals negative 3/4 x plus a negative 2, or minus 2. Don't forget, you need the x in the equation, but the slope doesn't have the x attached to it when we just find the slope. In number 2, this one has a positive slope. This one is moving up 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4. So my slope is 1/4. My y-intercept is right here at 3. So my equation is y equals 1/4 x plus 3. Again, I think that we've done so much of the equations to graphs that going graphs to equations is not that difficult. The tables tend to give us a little bit more trouble. But again, if you look at my trick with slope, I want to know how the y's are changing and how the x's are changing. Remember, the y's are always on the top, rise over run, change in y over the change in x, however you want to talk about that. But every single time, my y's are increasing by 1, and my x's are also increasing by 1, which means that my slope is just 1. And my y-intercept is where the x is 0. So my equation is just y equals 1x plus 4. Or you could just have y equals x plus 4. All right, for number 4, my slope, the y's are increasing by 2 each time. And the x's are increasing by 3 each time, which means that my slope is 2/3. My y-intercept is where the x is 0. My y-intercept is 2. So the equation for this line is y equals 2/3 x plus 2. Today you have a worksheet. One side, again, is all graphs that you need to come up with the equation of the line, and the other side has tables, and you have to come up with the equation from the tables. When you're done with that, make sure that you check your answers in Schoology on the answer key, and then take the learning check in Schoology. Let me know if you need any help.